私と貴様の格の差、その身をもって知るがいい。我らの誇りを汚した罪、その身ごときで贖えると思うな。
視界が強敵用で挽回が増強するちて、ほんまにひねくれすぎやでお前。ほんならそろそろ奇跡の時間や。ひっくり返したるわ。挽回坂島横島八方塞がり。トルメンタルエンクスでキルシエラコ。
Yo, what is going on, guys? This is your boy the Death Smasher, and welcome back to another Bleach Brave Souls video. And shoutouts once again to Absolute K for letting me be able to access his account and be able to do this video, because finally I've been wanting to do this comparison for a while, ever since Shinji came out. And today we are going to be doing another Who is Better video and comparing the two best Power Soul Reaper killers in the game, being the Spirit Society Byakuya, which we have gotten around end of the month of October, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and of course Bankai Shinji, who we've gotten back at the end of the month for March. And both of these units are amazing in their own way, just that one is melee and one is ranged. And of course both characters are captains, but Shinji is also a holo affiliated unit, so there's a bit of difference for when it comes to affiliation. But first, let's just go and take a look at their stats and skills first, and then we are going to be doing the individual runs on Inheritance Zone. So, taking a look at everything else, he's got Soul Reaper Killer, Strong Attack Recharge minus 12%, and is a Soul Reaper / Captain affiliated unit, and of course has Soul Reaper Killer. And taking a look at his stats, it's pretty up there. 1088 stamina, attack at 634, defense at 352, focus at 355, and the base SP is at 798. Of course, he has his SP transcended at level 5, so easy 250 plus SP added onto the SP count, which is still fine, don't get me wrong. Either way, he also did transcend Shinji's SP to level 5 as well. So taking a look at his attacks and his skills, he's got freeze on everything. It's a really useful status element, because if your unit doesn't have dupes and is only 1 out of 5 and you can only get the SP at level 10, for when it comes to the mobs where your unit has a hard time trying to kill, it's really good because it helps stop the enemies that are about to attack you, and it's overall really useful. And taking a look at his skills, he's got a Bruiser and a Berserker of 20%, Devastation at 40%, he is immune to being poisoned. He's got Havoc at 20%, Frenzy, Debilitator plus 5 seconds, and he also has Sprinter. So yeah, overall, really good in terms of stats and skills. And now, as we go ahead and take a look at Shinji, believe it or not, his stats are actually the same, minus the stamina and attack being slightly higher than Byakuya's. And of course, everything else in terms of defense, focus, and SP, it's exactly the same, really. The only difference is that Shinji is a melee character, and of course is a captain / holo affiliated unit. His SP is at level 5 too, so we will be able to compare them equally. And as we go and take a look at his attacks and his skills, he's got Confusion. Not really the best type of status element, but he does have a couple skills that actually help make up for having this kind of status ailment. As we go along, let's just go and take a look at this shit. So taking a look at his skills, he also has a Bruiser and Berserker of 20% as well. He's got a new type of skill where it increases a Power Captain's Berserker by an extra 20%. So it's very similar to Tenjiro's Party Boost skill, where he is able to give an extra 20% Berserker towards Speed Soul Reapers. But in Shinji's case, it's only going to be affected towards Power Captains, which can be a bit of a letdown, but at the same time, it's still really good for when it comes to boosting the likes of Thousand Year Blood War Toshiro and Spirit Society Byakuya. So really good. He's got Havoc at 20%. He's got Frenzy. He's got Debilitator plus 5 seconds. And this is what I was talking about that completely makes up for having a Confusion on his entire kit. He's got he's got an increased damage to confused enemies by 40%. So with that skill alone, it is going to be replacing the 40% devastation. So when it comes to nuking without a tension tie, Shinji is going to have a bit more problems with trying to nuke on his special. But at the same time, once you have used up the special, you will be able to do easily 40% extra damage towards enemies that are still alive even after being nuked by the special. And of course, he's got Sprinter +1. So yeah, overall, Shinji is going to be doing a bit more damage compared to Byakuya. However, we'll have a bit of a hard time with trying to nuke, which we will find out as we do the individual runs. So the setup that we're going to go for these characters are obviously going to be a badge, pill, and a tension tie, all with 30% SP, and of course the links being strong attack recharge links. So yeah, we will now be moving on to the individual runs, and then once I am done with the individual runs, I will give you guys my overall opinion on these two characters and highlight the pros and cons between the two. So let's just go ahead and get right to it, lads.
苦労さんな、魚で。
Now that we have seen the gameplays for both of the characters, let's talk about them. Kit-wise, they share the exact same kit overall with only a few minor differences. Both have a beam move on first, AoE 960 radius on second, and 1200 full screen radius on third. This is particularly good because it means that you can just live with one of the characters and be fine. You have Byakuya but don't have Shinji, he is still your best go-to Soul Reaper killer for power. The same thing goes with Shinji if you're missing Byakuya, just like in my case where I don't have him. The only difference is for when it comes to guild quests where you need specific characters that are melee or ranged but have the same killer. The only differences these characters have is that Byakuya has freeze while Shinji has confusion, and their nad strings, where Shinji has a melee collision nad string while Byakuya's is range collision. But now, let's just go ahead and go into the pros and cons for both of the characters. Starting it off with the finally not shafted Byakuya himself. So here are the pros. The freeze proc. Having freeze is a really nice asset to the character, especially for when it comes to doing co-op and guild quests, as he can actually stop enemies that are about to attack you. Maybe not the best status ailment compared to weakening, but it's still far from being the worst status ailment. Immune to poison. Pretty self-explanatory. Very useful in co-op rooms where we have poison pools. Has a 40% devastation. Unlike Shinji where he has a 40% damage to confused enemies, where your first hit is nerfed and then the rest acts like a substitute of the skill itself, Byakuya will be able to clear entire rooms depending on what special move level your Byakuya is at and how much you've invested into him for when it comes to transcending the character. Useful in floor 24 of Path of Valor. Since that floor boosts power captains that have the Soul Reaper killer effect, it makes him the ideal unit to use for that floor. Now that we've said the pros, let's move on to the cons. Does less damage than Shinji unless he is in a team with him in single player or co-op. Unlike Shinji where he sports out a 20% Berserker boost to himself and all other power captains, if you're in a team in co-op or single player without having Shinji on your team, Byakuya will do significantly less damage to mobs as he only has Frenzy with a 20% Berserker. Not to mention, when you freeze the enemies, you still do the same damage, unlike with Shinji, where after you inflict confusion, you do 40% extra damage towards enemy mobs. Range collision nad string! It's a bit of a hit or miss con, but I thought of including it in anyway. Yes, Byakuya is an SP unit with Frenzy, so having a range collision nad string doesn't impact the character in the slightest way, shape, or form, but if you want to do a nad build on this character, you, my friend, are not going to be enjoying it as it is just going to push back mobs a lot and you won't get the best damage done unless it's a unit that has Frenzy and has a melee collision nad string. Now, of course, nad builds are shit in co-op, but in single player, they are still fun to rock. Not a lot of cons for Byakuya, but now let's just go ahead and move on to Shinji. Starting off with his pros. Does more damage than Byakuya. This is all thanks to him having the 20% Berserker as a skill, plus the 20% Berserker boost to power captains, which applies to himself and his teammates, plus the 40% extra damage to confuse enemies, making Bankai Shinji the ultimate power Soul Reaper killer when it comes to having the biggest number of DPS possible for you to use at your disposal. Better nad string. Pretty self-explanatory. Melee collision nad string beats range collision nad string for when it comes to doing a nad build. Hit or miss pro, but I thought of including it in there. The only downside to it is his last string only has 100% instead of 120% magnification. But that's not a big deal since melee collision will always hit consistently well compared to ranged collision. Captain/Holo affiliated unit. This is especially great for Senkaimon quests because you can still use him as a standalone captain and as a holo for Senkaimon floors where they boost either captains or holos. And for those of you guys that still do Tower of Ordeals, Bankai Shinji is a good replacement for Power Aizen on floor 20 if you guys are still struggling on that floor, which I don't know why you guys would still struggle on that floor, since Power Aizen is quite common these days, but I digress. Speaking of how he is a captain, here's a good pro about Shinji that is related to Zenkamen quests. Useful in floor 24 of Path of Valor. Just like Byakuya, Shinji is still going to work on that floor since he still gets the same rules as Byakuya, making him another ideal unit to be a hard floor with. Now that being said, even though there weren't a lot of cons for Byakuya, there are a bit more cons for Shinji. So what are these cons? Well, let's get right to it then. Lack of 40% devastation. Now yes, Shinji does have the 40% extra damage to confused enemies, which completely replaces it. Which is good, but at the same time it's also bad. The first hit of the special is nerfed, and then kills off the already existing mobs on the map with the latter hits. In single player quests, you will not notice this issue as much, but in co-op, you're bound to have problems with nuking against the bosses. Now, the issue itself can be fixed with Transcendence and how much dupes you have fed into Shinji, but not everyone is going to have the resources to be able to transcend this Shinji if they're low on Hogyokus, money, scrolls, and whatnot. I personally like the 40% extra damage to confused enemies, but even I admit that it has its faults, and the fact that you even need dupes to begin with to improve the special, it's just not that great. No status ailment immunity. Hit or miss depending on the person, but since Byakuya is immune to poison and Shinji isn't immune to anything, that is saying something. Not a big issue for me if you get by it, but not a lot of people are gonna like that. Heavily affected by enemies in IZ where they have either Captain or Holo Killer. Remember that famous line from Spider-Man where, with great power comes with great responsibility? Well here, with great power comes with a great risk of dying! When it comes to doing inheritance zones, a lot of raids are filled with either enemies that have Captain Killer or even Holo Killer. So when playing as Shinji in Inheritance Zone, considering he is a Captain/Holo affiliated unit, you need to be extra careful when playing as him and dodge a lot to the point that you do not die. And now another con is Confusion. Confusion is one of the worst status ailments in the game, as all it really does is just confuse the direction in which enemies attack. The only thing that has been revamped about the Confusion ailment is the fact that now enemies can hit themselves or damage one another, which unfortunately isn't too noticeable. Thankfully, the status ailment got saved by the 40% extra damage to confused enemies. So on Shinji, for him having Confusion, it makes sense, but even I would have preferred it if he had Weakening or something else that can stop the mobs from attacking me. Bit of a hit or miss con, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. So yeah, Shinji, despite being the overall better character when it comes to DPS, he surprisingly has a lot of cons going for him compared to Byakuya, but also has more pros than Byakuya. Which is weird to say the least, but at the same time, it just works. To sum the entire comparison up, for when it comes to doing the best overall damage, Can't Fear Your Own World Shinji is actually the way to go since he has skills that buff up his overall DPS. But when it comes to just having a character that is safe to bring in co-op, that has a better status ailment and to avoid getting killed a lot if you're not good at dodging, Spirit Society Byakuya is actually the way to go. Overall, both characters are amazing. Shinji is by far the best Power Soul Reaper killer in the game, but comes with his own compromises, while Byakuya, who shares the same kit as Shinji, is a much safer character to bring into hard content in the game. Does less damage, but is still effective. And the one thing that matters the most is that you don't need both of the characters. If you have either Shinji or Byakuya, you're good to go. Like, you're not going to be missing out on anything if you're missing out Byakuya or if you're missing out Shinji or the other. The important thing that matters is having one of the characters. And then you're pretty much good to go for when it comes to power content where you can use power characters that have Soul Reaper Killer. And that basically concludes the overall character comparison between Bankai Shinji and Spirit Society Byakuya. Yo, Absolute K, you my man. Thank you once again, because I really do appreciate it. I've been wanting to do this character comparison for a while, and it feels good that I finally have it done here on my channel. So yeah, thanks again, man. That being said, if you guys liked this video, don't forget to smash that like button, share this video with your friends and family, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification so that way you guys are up to date with the most recent content I put out on my channel. So yeah, this has been your boy the Death Smasher, and I am signing out. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, lads.